drove a black Sebring convertible. I remember putting the top down even when it was 40 degrees outside because the demon complained about the cold. He would tell me that I was starting to make him mad, not in those words, and to put the top up. I became furious and started talking back and doing everything I knew would upset him. I was hoping he would get sick of it and leave. I handled this the wrong way. I brought on even more harassment by behaving this way and fighting a battle that was not mine to fight. Things were getting more bizarre, so I had this idea to try to record what was happening in the house, but when I turned on my tape cassette recorder, it busted and left a burnt smell in the air. Also, there seemed to be pockets of cool air in my room. I had believed those were portals for aliens to travel. At times, I could hear people conversing inside my stomach, and it felt like transmitters were running up and down my legs. Also, I would listen to my thoughts accelerate, slow down, and then return to an average rate. I could also feel entities playing with my hair. Also, I once heard a voice tell me that my maternal grandmother would die and that I would be Satan's bride. I also heard my mom's voice yell at me. I was still learning that demons can imitate anyone's voice. They also have a lot of knowledge about our lives and families, but they lie and try to reel people in with half-truths to gain some control over people's thoughts. This behavior is also carried out in the physical realm through the deceptive conduct and words of people and misleading philosophies. Out of desperation, I began going through every prayer the priest gave me. I would hear voices cussing, complaining, telling me to stop, and saying, "She's talking about us, let's go." But they would never leave. After reading every prayer the priest gave me, I would begin praying the rosary. I would always hear, "Not again. Jesus Christ." This was the first time that it had occurred to me that people say Jesus Christ as a curse word, just like these demons. They didn't curse anyone else. Neither does Hollywood when making movies. I assume his name is used because Jesus Christ is God, and the demons know it. Also, I noticed that the demons did not care if I used Mary's name. At one point, I tried using holy water to ward off the demons, which didn't work. Life is not always like a Hollywood movie, especially regarding exorcisms or deliverance from supernatural evil. Things don't work. Items won't deliver, protect, or heal you from evil in the spiritual realm. The voice to my left ear would pray with me, especially when I forgot a prayer. I could feel his breath on my face. I could also hear John's voice praying with me. I could hear angels singing in the background. It was unbelievable. Looking back, this was an illusion to make me believe that John's voice was a good spirit. Also, that angels were with me, which may have been true, but I'm not sure the sounds that I was hearing were godly angels. At some point, I also heard, "You don't know who you are messing with. You are supposed to be my bride. You married me. I can offer you fame and fortune if you will be my bride in hell," which I declined. This was claimed to be said by Satan. It is interesting to note that Dina's voice also told me a few times that I didn't know who I was messing with. I then had a strange sensation of power come over me. It felt like a good power. I stood up and started telling the demons that they had a life in hell to look forward to, and that they should turn their demon lives around to Jesus Christ. I told them that Jesus Christ was love, and they would never experience love or peace without Jesus Christ. Some of the demons claimed it might be a good idea, and others said Satan wouldn't have it, but in any event, no one appeared to leave. Then, I heard a voice claiming to be Lucifer. He said that he was going to give me his power so that I could see if I liked it or not. I told him I didn't want his power, but I felt a strong, evil force build up inside me that I did not like. I had a foul taste in my mouth. I told him repeatedly that I did not want his power or anything to do with him. Lucifer told me that I had over 20 demons inside of me. I don't know if I had that many, but I now know Lucifer is the father of lies. Jesus told some of the Pharisees, "You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires." He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. John 8:44, ESV. I heard so many voices that I couldn't keep up. I knew I wouldn't get any sleep if I stayed home, so I got in my car around 11 p.m. and headed for the nearest Catholic church. I had an idea to sit in the chapel. This wasn't the first time. As soon as I walked into the chapel, everything went silent immediately. However, I began to slightly make out the voice of 3 demons telling each other that they were leaving. I sat there dozing on and off, trying to sleep. But then I started hearing John asking me if I would marry him. I once heard that John's demon would never leave me alone. Other times I would hear that I was chosen by God. The next night, I went to the Lourdes Grotto and Guadalupe Tepeyac. which is referred to as the Oblate Missions Missionary Association of Mary Immaculate, on their website as the Spiritual Center of the Missionary Association, Mary Immaculate and Oblate Missions. People in San Antonio call it the Grotto. I walked around and sat down next to a statue of Jesus Christ. I prayed that he would save me. I meant from my bad circumstances, though. I heard a voice tell me that I was chosen by Jesus Christ to write a book. This surprised me. The voice would not tell me why I was chosen to write a book or what the book was supposed to be about. I was told that Larry is really an angel, but the demon make me think that Larry is a demon. The demon twists Larry's words around just like he did mine. I kept journals, so I continued writing about what was happening to me. Later, I was told by the voices that if I attended Mass and stopped smoking cigarettes, I would not hear them anymore. I didn't stop smoking, but I went to another Mass. It was strange because I could not focus on the Mass. I kept hearing two comedians' voices overpowering the priest's words. These voices appeared funny and friendly, but I've realized that funny and appearing friendly doesn't always mean friend. If the voices had wanted me to attend Mass, why didn't they allow me to concentrate? Later, Larry, John, and Dina were all present again, and we all heard more information about each other. The night ended with me having a long conversation with John. I told him to stay with his wife and children, and what we did was wrong. I then prayed for John and Dina. I prayed that they would work their problems out and stay together. It appeared angels intervened that night and told others to let me sleep. I got to sleep again. Another night, my parents came into town to bring my son back to me so I could take him back to his dad's house. I told them I would wait for them at a grocery store parking lot. I never told them what was going on. When they arrived, I had my car seat back and felt like my body was cooking. I felt more pain than ever. I had heard aliens telling me they were about to kill me, but before that, other aliens claimed they would fight Demon Butt. It was also strange. I could smell my body cooking. There was no way that I could get up out of the car to walk on my own. I felt like I was in a trance. It was good that my son wasn't living with me full time. My parents pulled up and were horrified to find me in that condition. They got me out of my car and put me in the back seat of their truck, and we all took my son home. I left my car in the grocery store parking lot. I told my parents that I was told by the voices to stay away from my house and to live somewhere else. My parents checked us into a hotel room, and I went outside to smoke a cigarette and prayed again for John and Dina's marriage. I could hear Dina thanking me for praying for them. I returned to the hotel room, but I asked my mom and dad to pray the rosary with me because I could still hear other voices. We did, and my parents fell asleep. While they were sleeping, my mouth opened, and I began praying what seemed to be the rosary at a high rate of speed. My mouth began moving so fast that I could not understand the prayers. It was like someone else was using my mouth. I found a Bible in the hotel room and slept with it under my pillow. I was so happy that my parents were there with me. The following day, I told my parents I did not want to live in that house anymore. I thought it was haunted, so I wanted to move. They decided to allow some friends of mine to move in and rent it from them. I called my friend Shelley. She said that I could live with her as long as I needed. My parents and I went to my house to start packing and moving. I could hardly function. When I entered my bedroom, approximately 20 or more voices started talking to me at once. It was overwhelming. One told me to hurt myself with scissors, but I knew better. I wondered about people who would harm themselves or others because they heard voices. I was thankful I hadn't reached that point. I couldn't handle the noise inside the house, so I went outside and stood in the front yard and prayed while throwing up what I believed to be demons. The taste was dreadful, and I thought God was removing the demons from my body. This was a trick. No demon was leaving. If they were coming right back in, so it seemed. My dad walked outside and saw me doing this. He looked worried. We all went back to the hotel room for the night. Soon after, my parents spoke to my boss about getting me into a hospital. My boss agreed. My parents received information from one of my neighbors on how to get me admitted quickly. Once we were at the hospital, I was quickly directed to the psychiatric floor for evaluation. They told me they wanted to keep me there for a few days, and if I chose to stay, I could not leave the hospital until the doctors approved. I was very concerned about my job. My boss was like a second dad to me, and I knew he needed me, but after talking to my parents, I agreed. The voices told me they would leave while I was in the hospital. They said something about how they would be detected if the medicine didn't appear to work. Everything went quiet for a while. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I was very worried about my boss and job. I finally got to a point where I would socialize with the other patients, only because I was told I had to if I wanted to be released. When first admitted, they had put me in a room with several doctors and students who all sat around and listened to me tell them what was happening. Their faces looked as though they had never heard anything so crazy. I had hoped that what I shared wasn't the most insane thing they had ever heard. I had hoped I wasn't worse off than everyone they had diagnosed. I was put on several drugs. I was eating well, 3 meals a day. The food was delicious. I even put on some weight. After being released, my parents drove me to Shelley's house where I was to live and pay rent. Nicole stayed too sometimes. My parents had done all the moving for me while I was hospitalized. Also, my boss was happy to see me. I took my medication for a few weeks, but it made me feel rigid and weird, making it impossible to work comfortably. Since I was only hearing "I love you so much" and still feeling sensations, I figured it was safe to stop taking the medicine. This was in January of 2007. Aside from hearing "I love you so much" and still feeling sensations, not much else happened other than me hitting an intense depression, falsely believing that Jesus Christ didn't want to save me. I had pulled away from faith in him. I felt like God had forsaken me because he didn't answer my prayers how I wanted. I knew that turning my back on God was making me more depressed. I also knew that hell is absent of God and spiritual life. Every day I wished to be dead the moment I opened my eyes. It took every ounce of strength to get out of bed and walk to the bathroom to brush my teeth or shower. Simple tasks required all my willpower and strength. I felt as though I were moving in thick mud that was fighting against my living. I was ridden with severe anxiety and uncomfortable in my skin for hours at times. There was no peace. I had no social life. I didn't want to talk to anyone. All I wanted to do was lie in my room and sleep to avoid the misery of being awake. Things were going well for Shelley. She met a nice man and they started going to church on Sundays. They invited me. I went a few times, but I didn't understand why Christians held up their hands in church. They looked so happy and peaceful. They had energy. I prayed at the altar when the pastor asked, but nothing changed at that time.